So Creature Commandos is an adult animated superhero series that officially kicked off the DCEU, and it's really interesting watching it after Superman, as Superman sets up the DCEU in a very hopeful way, whereas Creature Commandos definitely does show the darker side of the DCEU. And even though the first episode of the series is pretty weak, afterwards it just becomes so unmissable. And it really is so exciting that James Gunn and the entire team behind the scenes have got the entire DC sandbox to play with, and it's really nice that they were able to do that. And I love all of the Easter eggs that they had in this series, namely Clayface and of course that ominous Batman tease. It does definitely feel very familiar with everything that James Gunn has created thus far, for example the Suicide Squad, Guardians, and of course Peacemaker, but I do feel like they are able to do something new here with Task Force M, as they are all monsters. And James Gunn wasn't kidding when he was saying that he is only going to greenlight projects that truly feel emotional at their core and have a real reason for being, and I have to say Creature Commandos definitely has those in spades. And I feel like it's a little bit like Wicked in terms of certain characters are perceived to be monsters and thereby are treated very differently by society, and with all of these different characters, both humans and monsters, you can see how their life plays out based upon this crazy judgment that so many people have. For example, certain characters are totally ostracized, certain characters want to fight back, some people really give into it, for example like Frankenstein and Dr. Phosphorus, and are obviously going down the very wrong path, but Nina just wants to go down the right path so badly but just gets shunned and then actually does leave society, and then when society does find her again just wants to jail her, and then a number of unfortunate circumstances lead to her death. So I have to say, from an emotional point of view, this series absolutely did deliver. But not only that, I love the mystery that was taking place. For example, can you trust this rogue Amazonian sorceress Cersei, especially with her flash forward? On that point, how brilliant was the flash forward? I love that there was Batman, Green Lantern, Superman, all of these characters. And on that point, I do love the fact that even though somebody might seem absolutely beautiful, absolutely innocent, don't judge a book by its cover, because Princess Restoria was so manipulative, so cunning, so calculated, so twisted, and was happily going to cause World War III and destroy everybody in her path. Although I did really like Rick Flag Sr.'s point in terms of if she hasn't done it yet, can you actually convict her for this crime? And I just feel like the fabric of this show, obviously in a much lighter way, but he was going to explore this in Scooby-Doo 3, where the perceived villains are actually the victims because the humans that are persecuting them are actually the real villains. And I loved the lost structure that they had with this series on a whole, in terms of every single episode is dedicated to a different character, both in the present as well as finding out more about their backstory in the past. So let's go through all of the cast and characters now. So I feel like if there ever was a main character of this show, it has to be the bride, as she was so good. I mean, she was originally created to be the bride of Frankenstein, but then constantly just rejects this guy, but he is such a stalker, he just does not get the message, and willingly and happily just kills off loads of people in order to get to her. And I have to say, she is such a badass on the battlefield, as she is able to easily defeat so many characters, and she is just overflowing with personality, and she definitely is that type of character that you just can't wait to see again. I mean, we're obviously going to see her in season 2, but hopefully we also get to see her in live action soon, as I cannot wait to see this character coming face to face with some of the DC legends. G.I. Robot, by contrast, I feel like was pretty much the weakest of the group. I mean, he didn't have that much of a backstory. I mean, some of his fight sequences, fair enough, they did look pretty impressive, especially when he had his advanced builds on a number of different occasions, and when we next see this guy, I'm sure that he will be even more well developed. But from an emotional storyline perspective, I just feel like he lacked so much depth. Frank Grillo was really good as Rick Flag Sr. Of course, he's the father of the brilliant Rick Flag from both Suicide Squad movies, and of course his death at the hand of Peacemaker was just such an emotional rollercoaster, and he totally does get seduced by the princess and gets caught up in that entire whirlwind. But you can tell that he has got a heart of gold underneath, and he is such a nice guy, and I'm sure that he will pretty much be in every single project in the DCU. David Harbour does a very different character to the Red Guardian as Frankenstein, the ultimate toxic guy. I know a number of people really despise this guy, but I think it's important to show what dark, sinister sinister people really can be like. Especially as he doesn't take no for an answer and is just an awful stalker across a number of different decades. And he brutally kills off so many people, including the blind woman that took him in. And the darkest part of all of this is that he is able to self-rationalize and justify all of his evil, heinous acts, especially when he then took her dog over for himself. Cersei, I think she was definitely bringing the magic and the powerhouse from a superhero, supervillain perspective, and already I cannot wait to see this character again, especially as she wants to create something new, for example, the Sons of Themyscira. So it'll be interesting to see how she is going to inevitably fall into the Wonder Woman plot. I thought Viola Davis was really great as Amanda Waller once again. Of course, it does feel repetitive to everything that we have seen previously, but if you are going to do it again, you have to have Amanda Waller in there. So now let's talk about some of the saddest storylines with these characters. So Dr. Phosphorus was such a nice guy, but because of the fact that he didn't want to give his work to the dark evil people, Rupert Thorne personally decided to completely ruin this guy's life and took so much pleasure in killing his wife and then incriminating this guy by putting his fingerprints all over the murder weapon and then framed him for this. I have to say, DC is able to create such evil, dark characters. But then when this guy unexpectedly turns into Dr. Phosphorus, he is happy to completely do the same to Rupert Thorne and completely pay him back by taking over his position as a crime lord, and he is somewhat enjoying it before Batman suddenly comes into the picture and completely ruins this for him. And I think that was a really great decision to do that, as Dr. Phosphorus is of course a lesser known Batman villain, so I cannot wait to see Batman properly in the mix here as well. Obviously we all want to see Robert Pattinson's Batman in here, but I feel like they're going to go down the more fantastical route and maybe hire someone else. But it has been teased that the Batman that will ultimately be in the DCU is going to be played by a different actor, is going to be more fantastical, and most likely is going to be a lot older. So maybe there will be a Nightwing already here, a Red Hood already here, maybe even a Tim Drake already here, which means that the next fourth one is going to be Damian Wayne. I love that Weasel was back from the Suicide Squad, but not only that, they explored his backstory and it's equally tragic, as he was only accepted by a group of kids and he's happy to play with them and then is trying to save them in the school, but because of the fact that he can't speak, all of the police officers are wrongly blaming him even though he was happy to save so many people. And this PTSD definitely does take over Weasel when he is thinking that Nina is going to kill the princess and then wants to save the princess because she reminds him of the young girl from his past. And then we have Nina, the most tragic of all. Of course, she was born with this physical ailment in terms of her lungs being on the outside, and her father was happily willing to just do anything that he can to prolong her life by putting all of these machines on her and then injects her with sea creature DNA, which turns her into this kind of amphibian. And then it really does take high school bullying to a whole other level, as they are just treating her like an animal and she just wants to be accepted by society, but at all situations they just constantly shun her to the point where she feels like she needs to run away. I thought her letter to her father was so emotional and so heartfelt. On that point, like I was saying before, James Gunn really does know how to pull on your heartstrings. And then when she is captured by humans and then wanting to be thrown into jail, the dad doesn't realize that actually they do have a water tank inside the car and thinks that she is not going to survive. And then of course naturally he does want to talk to his daughter as well, but the police officers tragically shoot him. So it was just such a sad storyline. And then of course within all of the Creature Commandos group, Nina was the nicest. So it was just such a sad and tragic storyline. So overall, while Creature Commandos did have a slow start and does feel very repetitive to loads of different things you have seen before, especially by James Gunn, I feel like the difference here is that it is so emotionally driven and of course is fully centered on monster-based characters, which I feel like makes it really unique and super gripping, and I already cannot wait for season 2. And equally cannot wait to see these characters again, and so for all of those reasons, I'm going to give Creature Commandos a solid 7 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear from you. What did you think of Creature Commandos? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.